Hey, so I asked some friends on Patreon to send me questions about any questions they had about Conversations. Since we're celebrating Conversations with a remaster re-release on vinyl, we hope via Kickstarter. And they sent the best questions. And I just have to say, I love my peeps over there on Patreon. They are like me because their questions are just so resonant and are the questions I ask myself anyway. So I did a commentary on Conversations about 5 years ago, actually, with Troy at the 20th anniversary of Conversations, and that's been up on Patreon for some time. But yeah, so I have talked about it, but back when I made Conversations, I wasn't doing commentaries at that point, so I don't have one back from the day. I do have journals, and if you can imagine, a lot of these questions run along the same lines, like what is it like to, revisit these songs? And yeah, if you can imagine pulling out your diary from when you were 26 years old, that's really what this is like. It's very interesting, and obviously not without, complications. So so I want to answer a few of these questions. I got some good ones. So they're kind of categories here with these questions, but I wanted to jump in on one of them. Felt interesting and kind of just is a fun memory to revisit. Okay, Abby asked me, what, if anything, changed in your life after your song started getting radio play? Any fun recollections from your first Dove Awards experience, performing and being nominated? Yeah, that's a great question. The radio play question, things really changed. If the general vibe at this time in my life, if you can imagine, is both a dream is coming true and I am completely overwhelmed. I'm a new mom, so on both fronts, there's so much joy. There's so much to celebrate. I am, over the moon, and I am completely overwhelmed. I remember my first and only Dove Awards experience. I did go back and present another year. So my category, New Artist of the Year, I was, by the time I'd signed with a label and the record had been out and on the radio, I was 28, almost 29 years old. All of the other artists in that category were young'uns. They were so young. Joy Williams, amazing voice, incredible songwriter. Nikki Leonte, incredible talent. She was 15, I think. Joy was 16. They were all very young. I can't imagine. I just can't even imagine now going through that and being put into that process so young. Even as it was, Troy and I, we were just holding on for our dear lives. And Troy was trying to make good decisions. He's trying to build something good that lasts. And you're you're getting a lot of conflicting information about what's good for you. So, and then some really awesome people. I always remember when I talk about this record that this is how I met most of you that are listening right now. This is how we met. So I feel very grateful, very, very grateful for that. So, but I do remember the first time I went to the Dove Awards, I had left teaching at this point and I was just doing music full time. But I'm like my own wardrobe, most everything. And so I went out and got a dress. It was kind of funky. Think art teacher, think like, I don't know. I didn't know what I was doing. So anyway, I remember being in this huge backstage at the Opry, and it's a massive, massive building. I don't know how many people it seats, but it's just huge. And I had bought this dress, and it was like kind of, I don't know, it was like long, kind of fitted, but had a little bit of flowers and stuff on it, but it wasn't I didn't think it was too much. But when I got to the Dove Awards and I was back in the dressing room, it's like clearly this is the year that everyone is going to wear denim. Everyone was in denim. Everyone was in denim. And I am backstage getting ready and I've got my hair, I'm kind of an updo, and I've got this dress on. And anyway, some girl makes a smart comment about like being overdressed. I was stunned. I couldn't believe the cattiness. And then I'm just so super sensitive. So I go out to walk the halls and I'm on the verge of tears, which is totally normal for me to be on the verge of tears. And it's a very stressful experience. I mean, it's also exciting. You know, it's backstage. All the artists that you can think of are there, you know, mingling around or whatever. Anyway, I'm walking down the hallway and I hear this little voice say, "How is it between us?" And I turn around and Kirk Franklin says, "Sarah Groves." And he starts singing "How is it between us" to me. And he runs over to me. He puts me in this big bear hug. He picks me up off the ground and was just singing the song, celebrating, like, "I love your music, love this song." Anyway, God sent Kirk Franklin. He was an angel sent from the Lord that night to give me a big old papa hug and lift me up off the ground and just celebrate. I'll never forget that, ever. But it gave me the courage, this little shot in the arm, to go out there and sing however many seconds of "How is it between us" that I was supposed to be singing. The other thing I remember from that is that Dove Awards is part of GMA week. And so traditionally we were at this huge hotel called the Renaissance, and the lobby is just like at the who's who of everybody walking into that lobby. Again, so fun, star-studded, but also completely overwhelming. And in the middle of that, so whenever I got this award, my mom, you know, and her sister and everybody were talking, my cousins, and a massive group of family came out from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, the Ozarks, came to Nashville. My girlfriends from home, Terry and Barb, came, everyone dressed to the nines. We all went out to dinner, and then they had their seats just in the absolute nosebleed section of the Opry. My family was up there. So I had this little comfort knowing, like, Kirk Franklin's got my back. And they're my people, you know, just totally celebrating. And yeah, it was sweet. I remember when I was in the Renaissance lobby, and it's just like fun again, so many people, and you're just like, there you are in the middle of it. And the elevator opened, and there was my grandmother, my Grammy. And yeah, just like, ooh, it brought me back to like, this is who you are. One thing that really changed after my songs were played on the radio is that's all I did. I went around to radio stations for a good year and a half. I was just going to radio stations. We did one tour of, I think we did 28 stations in 25 days or something like that. So it was, that's kind of a thing that keep it self-perpetuating or whatever. You have to feed it. And I just felt like, I don't think this was my calling to go around to radio stations and do this. But that was a big part of it, is that all of a sudden my schedule was chock full of meeting and going to radio stations. But I met a lot of neat people. So Beth, Deanna, and Amber all asking me about the song conversations. And I'll never forget, after a show once I was out east, I think I was in Philadelphia, and a man came up after the show and he just said, like, everything is meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And it just stuck with me. It worked on me for years after. I understand what I was asserting and saying in this song, that Jesus is what brings my life meaning. But since then, I have heard other, leaders, kind of from their space of scripture, sola scriptura, take this stance that, just that nothing here on earth matters. And obviously, no, I do not hold with that. And that is, I do think that a lot of what I'm doing in the record conversations, you can find in the Psalms. So the psalmist does use hyperbole quite a bit. And so there are moments in this record where I am speaking hyperbolically about, the bigness of God, or my feelings about my faith. But one of the major things that shifts in this song for me from when I wrote it is that this was a conversation I was trying to have with a friend. I had taught with him, and we would have great conversations at lunch. And if I ever made a foray into any kind of faith element, the conversation came to a quick stop. And so one day we were walking out to our cars, and he just turned to me and said, what do you believe anyway? And I did something that I now feel like I have a name for, a little bit better name for, and that is when my directive was switched on. And I find a great metaphor for this in the movie WALL-E, which I just love. But in the movie WALL-E, I know I'm all over the place here, but bear with me. WALL-E is, left on Earth. Humanity has left Earth because it's not livable, and they send down this little scout called Eva, who's supposed to try to detect, scan, and see if she finds any life. And when they find life, the humans are going to come back and rebuild. WALL-E's just a little robot, and he's just cleaning up all the time, and he's building his own version of the world. He's made buildings, he's made all this stuff out of the trash. So he's this little redemptive character that's constantly doing these remaking and rebirthing things, but he's just on his own. So Eva comes down to scan for life, and that's her directive. Her directive is when she finds life, she's supposed to take it and take it back to the ship. And so the days that she's there before she finds any life, they're just doing what people do, what humans do, what friends do. They're showing each other what they like. They're dancing. He's showing her his favorite movies, favorite music. She's showing him how she can blow things up. And they're just they're becoming friends. And then Eva opens the door of an old refrigerator, and there is a plant sitting in a shoe, and her directive is flipped. And she scans it, and she just takes in the plant into a little compartment inside of her, and she just shuts down. And it shows her on this, they're both sitting on this little ledge, and WALL-E, they've just had this actual real experience over these last few days. And now he's trying to reach out to her. He's trying to hold her hand, and he brings lights and strings them up around her. He puts an umbrella over her while she's all shut down. She's just waiting to be summoned back. And because this directive switch has been flipped. And so this to me is what so many people in faith spaces and in political spaces as well, but around belief systems, where we're kind of being human with each other, and then a directive gets flipped, and it's I must say, So growing up, evangelical, I definitely had, in Pentecostal, I definitely had serious directives. It's this is my opportunity now, must tell, And so I remember in that parking lot, I went into this the 4 spiritual laws, or some kind of, unpacking of a more doctrinal place of what I believed. And I went home and I said to Troy, that sucks. We're friends. And I kind of went into this thing. So even before I had language for it, this song is an aspirational song anyway, saying, how do I stay human here and talk about my faith in a way that that actually is meaningful? And I think many of us, we've lost this ability to pluralism just out the door. We don't even know how to do it, how to exist together with people that don't think like us and whatever. But just to have a curious conversation full of wonder, full of humanity, about to be curious. Well, what do you believe? What do you believe? So I appreciate that he asked me, and I do. In it, I hear this girl, and she's saying, wait a minute, when that directive gets flipped, I become less human. Yeah, I just turned into something else. And that little metaphor of WALL-E kind of sticks with me, because I think we do this around a few things where it's all of a sudden we go into our directive. And so even though I wouldn't maybe say everything exactly the same way that I did in conversations, I see in it this girl that had this aspiration to how do I stay human? And how is this thing really a part of my life? And how is it part of my here life? And that's really the conversation I'm having on this record. I've grown up with a pretty strong hereafter view of my faith. And now I'm kind of looking around and asking questions, and I'm toggling in between these spaces of directive and wait, how is this really going to work? How is this, how can we stay in conversation? So Angela asked me, this journey is my own. What were you processing in your soul at the time that you wrote the song? Was there a specific decision breaking you down, or was it a broader revelation? I cannot stress to you how many people are giving us advice and me advice at this point. Troy and I are both, I jokingly, but actually say that I'm from a dynastic family in the Pentecostal movement, and especially in the Assemblies of God. And so that's formational for us, and we come out of that space. And there are just a lot of ideas about what ministry is and what the world is like, and all these things, and what selling out is like. And then I remember my reaction the first time someone asked me if I wanted a merch table. I just was like, you mean a place to put my ministry tools? So I was also trying to struggle. I was working with the language of like, my merch table, merchandise. I mean, where are we? What is going on? So, and then I had people talking to me about, just don't ever sell out. So my guard was up so high of like, who's going to try to make me sell out? And weirdly enough, that's another form of weirdness. It's like, where you give this spiritual heaviness to everything, and you're not sort of like just living your life in the real world. So then in Nashville, that's a straight up business. I mean, no lie. It's a business. If the word Christian is being applied to something that's not a person, it's a marketing tool. And so it's how we find stuff in the store. Where would I find your music? It's over there in the Christian section, but in the sense, and Charlie Peacock's written gobs about this as well, but a song can't be a Christian. And so I had a lot of crazy, some cutthroat businessy kind of stuff, and then you have the super hyper religious stuff, and then you have just everyone had their opinion about what was going on. And then I'm a people pleaser. And so I am like, is everybody okay? Who's okay? Are we all okay? And it was not okay. I was just like pulled every which way. And then I tend towards rumination and wanting to be right, get things right. And so anyway, I was pretty bound up, pretty tied up. And that was just it. It was just like processing all these things. And to say, hey, to everyone, not just to the world, actually almost exclusively to the different Christian spaces I was in. I was having to say, wait, at the end of the day, I want to be proud of this music that I'm making. I want to have learned what I'm here to learn. I want to, be faithful to the gifts that I've been given. All right, my friend Mark asks, how much of a role did Troy play in the making of this record and you starting a career in music? He played the whole role. He was the butter and the bun. He was the entire thing. No, obviously I played a role as well. But I'm not an activator, and I had very little faith in myself. So Troy, he is a serial entrepreneur now. I've been married to him for 30 years, and I really know that he's always got a lot of irons in the fire, and is very creative. And what he does, his work with IJM, he applies that, brings that creativity to that role big time, and is always just wanting to make things better and wanting to grow, and has a vision and wants to do stuff. So when we were newly married, his gifts were kind of coming out, and I was, playing these songs. And, but I would say that, I feel for him, because his role at the beginning is just it's his career as well. It's not just mine, it's both of us together. And he was, in a place of, when we first started out, I didn't have a baby, and we were just out on the road, and he was it was all strategy, and we were in that together. And it was hey, look at this stuff that's happening. And he was making stuff happen, and he was activating around that. And then I had a baby, and we didn't know. Literally, he asked me, how much time do you need off? And I thought, well, and I'm not a researcher at all. I'm just, life happens to me, and then I'm then I'm figuring it out. So sweet Troy, he was going on the offense, and all of a sudden I needed a defender. I needed someone to be goalie, to be saying no more and to be like whatever. And so this time in our lives is a real, like, it's a test to our marriage. It's a test to us as people, just like, hey, and he's trying to, at every front, do the right thing. He wants to, on both fronts, for both of us, grow. And all of a sudden, and even in my label as well, I think they signed me. Jeff Mosley signed me in October of 2000, and a week later signed Mercy Me. So he was just building INO and just starting to build his roster. And here I'm his first artist, and I'm literally in like a do not tell me what to do mode. And just self-protective, like, okay, wait, my whole world is now this child, and I want to be doing that well as well, and do that obviously to the best of my ability. So Troy he's both, he's at the beginning of all of it. He's the reason that any of it happens. And then it's just complicated. It's complicated for us in our marriage, and it's complicated for him as a provider. And, but anyway, I think the best story about Troy is that when I came out with my very first independent record, Past the Wishing, and then we recorded Conversations, Troy had always had a dream of playing drums, and he practiced for a year in the basement, practiced and practiced and practiced. And then one day we got to this event, and the person who was going to play percussion wasn't able to come. And I'm like, you're up. And he jumped in, and Troy was out there, playing drums with me. I mean, he actually was a really great drummer. He would always say is just like a glorified percussionist, but I loved that season where we're all out on the road together. Incredible. And but Troy's fingerprints are all over everything. The other big thing he does is he gives me permission to tell all my stories, including the ones about him, about us. He's got a pretty confidence about him in that regard that I really respect. All right, both Doug and Joshua are asking kind of the same question about my relationship with the songs now, and how I connect with them now, this many years later. Joshua kind of shares his own story. He says, I first listened to Conversations around the time it came out. I was 12 years old. My dad bought the CD for my mom. It didn't really connect with her, but I really enjoyed it and commandeered the CD for my own collection. I then bought the sheet music, worked through songs on the piano. I'm now 36. I still play some songs from time to time, either on Spotify or on my piano. Some of the songs that were once meaningful to me are now more difficult for me to connect with. They remind me of a person I once was, but I am no longer. Other songs have new meaning for me. This is all from the perspective of the listener. My question for you is, in what way has your relationship with the songs on Conversations changed? Are there some that have a new, deeper meaning, or some where you recognize the person who wrote them but don't connect with that person anymore, or at least at a distance? That's a big question. And yeah, of course, I said earlier to someone, like, think about pulling out your diary from when you were 25, 26 years old. It's crazy at some level to revisit and to think through all these things. But so there are songs, absolutely, I still lean into them and I can sing them at the top of my lungs. And there are some where I think, no, I would not say that the same way that I did there. One of them in particular, Joshua, was How Is It Between Us? I had to play it for someone requested it, and I don't always do all requests, but I thought it was just not a lot of new stuff. So I thought, well, maybe I'll brush up How's It Between Us? I like that song. And I had not listened to it in years. And I put it on, I was in my car and I'm singing it, and it's like, this is a bop. This feels great, and yeah, just like feels true. And then it got to the bridge and it says, so let the wicked prosper, let the oceans roar, let the mountains crumble and fall into sea. There's something more important weighing on my mind. How is it between you and me? And I just thought, no, let the wicked prosper. So, I mean, since I wrote this song, I've been a part of so many different unbelievable, faith-informed movements that are saying, no, we're God's plan A for showing up in the world and for demanding justice and for, helping be a part of reconciliation. If this isn't a reconciling gospel, I don't know what it is. It is a reconciling gospel, us reconciled to God, reconciled to each other, reconciled to this earth that he made. So hearing like, let the oceans crumble into the sea, let all this stuff happen. No, that's not, I was literally stunned. I forgot about that part. And, but then I remembered again that the psalmist, this was based on a psalm, and the psalmist uses that kind of hyperbole when he's bearing witness to the kind of the bigness of God. But what really, didn't sit well with me was like, as long as we're good, let the whole thing burn, let this whole Project Earth, just that whole mentality that after all that God has done, and even that this unbelievable story where every man says in his heart, if I were God, and he's doing his power over, and then God himself comes and he does this totally other thing. Jesus has every bit of strength and every bit of knowledge and every bit of ability to come, land on earth like Thor and do some kind of like what we thought God's did. And he does what God really is. He shows what God really is. Anyway, so to say basically, like, I got my ticket to ride, and Dallas Willard, taught me a lot about this, that like if my faith is just this transactional moment to like get my ticket to ride, and it's all about the hereafter and has nothing to do with the reconciling work that we have here. No, I don't think that was actually like moment that caught me totally off guard. The other one would be, I've got a handful here and there, but actually this record was on a podcast. It was kind of a deconstructionist podcast that they were going through and grading old CCM records, just like talking through like, what do we think about this? And I think it got a good grade. I actually agreed with most of what they said, except for the point where they wondered out loud if I was dead. I think they were like, is she still alive? And people live well into their 50s and beyond. It's been known to happen. So other than when they wondered if I was dead, I thought a lot of what they brought forward was this conversation. But the other one would be in the Word. I was trying to imitate in the Word. I was wanting to imitate Fred Hammond. I had been listening to a lot of Fred Hammond and Chapters of Life. Just love that record. And he just like puts a lot of, he just full on quotes scripture, and it's so powerful. It hit me as so powerful because he's just kind of like imploring people, like, keep going, God loves you, and here's my evidence. And he'd pull out, just some of the hits, And so I thought, what if I want to do that? I want to put, the power of those words. We're no longer slaves. We're daughters and sons, and neither depth nor height. I like, what are the things? What are the things that are really powerful? And to kind of put those into that bridge like that. That was a lot of fun. I was trying to like have this kind of Fred Hammond moment. But earlier in the song, I kind of imply that asking questions is unfaithful. And again, no. Asking questions is not unfaithful. And what I go on to say is the word I need is the word that was, who put on flesh to dwell with us in the beginning. Yes. Jesus is, God showing, he's the revelation of God, period. He's God showing himself to us. And so 100% behind that. But the idea that I would get sort of, and I know I'm not quite saying this like the lyric is, but that I would get fit for truth at 26, and that would fit me for the rest of my life is obviously, no, that's ridiculous. But the idea that that Holy Writ has wisdom and words and is a living word, and that there is in Jesus a word spoken by God that is the word that I need. Absolutely. I still resonate with that. Part B to Joshua's question was what songs have taken on a deeper meaning for me. And I would say that the deeper meaning mostly, well, it comes from my own lived experience in a song like Painting Pictures of Egypt, where I have like seen that play out over and over again, where I'm, I am going to the Hebrew word for just sort of like nothingness, raw. I want to live into Tov. I want to live into Tov. Tov in Genesis is that beautiful word that means good with the seeds of future good in it, generativity, and to see that and that the way that works in our communities and works in our creative lives and the way that works. So there are elements of this record that I feel have that Tov in it. And Painting Pictures of Egypt is me saying, okay, I want to leave all that raw behind and move towards Tov. I want to move towards these things that are life-giving. The other things that have increased in meaning are just as I meet everybody and talk to you about the songs, your stories about the songs have absolutely deepened the meaning. And I would say no song more than He's Always Been Faithful. I've wrestled with the song myself because, well, first there's the word, always in it, and the way that prayer is a mystery to me. And I definitely these days leave a lot of room for mystery. Just that has changed my relationship with prayer. I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know what that kind of like showing up will look like, that presence. But presence is something that I definitely can testify to. And that ever-present help, even when I'm not feeling it. I've spoke pretty openly about my journey with mental health and depression, especially. I have pretty deep bouts of depression, and God's everness with me, his ever presence, and what I can only call friendship. Is something I can testify to. I bear witness to it. So in that way, the song deepens for me, for sure. But then as I go out, I have had to sing that song in some of the most difficult scenarios ever. I've been invited to sing it, at funerals, obviously, children that have passed, suicide, people that have lost their life to suicide, to lives cut short by cancer, by accident. People's story comes back to me. And so even if I have my own wrestle with it, and like, I don't know, what I won't pretend to know is like God's role in those things. I think he doesn't ask us to call terrible things. I don't think he's asking us to call terrible things good. I was working on that song for a while. I haven't finished it, but don't make me call this good. Like, don't make me kind of align God with this destructive thing, this thing that's been so destructive in my life. At the same time, I believe by his nature, again, in that spirit of good and of Tov, that is like the actual fabric of who God is, his very character, that in journeying with and in that ever presence, even the worst aspects of my life are, I don't have to call them good. I think God weeps with us. He does. Jesus weeps with us. He weeps with Mary. He knew what he knew Lazarus was going to come back. He knew what he was going to do. And why? Why does he cry? It's this extravagant gift. It's an extravagant gift. And so I sit with the extravagant gift of pain having been held and God being present in it. And to that end, I bear witness. And then so many of you have borne witness back to me about that. And that blows my mind, because the things that I wrote the original song about, and often with a lot of these songs, what I wrote the original song about was this like not little, but I wasn't like going to the mat, not like some of you have gone to the mat. And then to hear your stories back about it, it's just this one big snowball of meaning, of just like, oh, wow, how does that go out and just continue to gather witness, just gather more and more witness to it. And I often find the things that I look back and go, that's not exactly how I'd say it now. I guess my ability to go back and like come back to this space is to say, I think that the seeds of the beginnings of these conversations were there. They were there at the beginning. Conversations. I'm trying to work out like what is meaningful to me and how do I communicate this in a human way. And anyway, to bring this whole thing full circle, these are conversations. My pastor, anytime he's opening, beginning a sermon, his spirit, he doesn't say it all the time anymore, but he used to say, this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end. And I love that because that record was the beginning of a conversation and it is not the end. And and here we are this many years later, bearing witness to the ways that we felt, all of it, all the human stuff, the ways we felt let down, the ways that we felt emboldened, the ways that we felt comforted, the ways that we felt abandoned. Those conversations all continue. And this is just where it started for me. And so if you made it this far, thanks for listening, and God bless.